And it's just the multiple choice questions I'm talking about just now. So question 1, cars burn fossil fuels to release energy. What characteristic of living organisms is similar to the burning of fuel to release energy? That would be respiration. Question 2, why is tar and cigarette smoke harmful? It's not because it causes addiction, it's the nicotine primarily that does that. It does cause cancer though, and it's nothing to do with platelets or sticking to the blood vessel walls, so it is B. Question 3 then, which statement about greenhouse gases is correct. They don't cause acid rain, it's sulfur dioxide, which comes from the burning of fossil fuels, coal and oil actually, that causes acid rain. They're not produced in photosynthesis, they are used in photosynthesis. They don't generate heat when they react with sunlight, but they do reduce the heat loss from the earth. So that's D. Question 4. An electric kettle has the following label attached to its base. This is quite difficult to read, my apologies for that. But we have current, 7.5 amps, frequency, 50 hertz, power, 1800 watts, voltage, 240 volts. How is an appropriate fuse for the kettle labelled? Well, the current is 7.5 amps. So what we need is a fuse that will carry at least 7.5 amps. And the only one of these that is an amp is the first one. So it has to be 10 amps, the first option. Question 5. Optical fibers are used to transmit telephone conversations. What is transmitted? Well, a constant amplitude wouldn't be right. The amplitude is about the amount of energy, so that wouldn't be right. A change in energy would result in a change in volume. So, volume of the sound, I mean. So, pulses of electromagnetic waves, that sounds good. Pulses of sound waves, well, we don't send sound down optical fibers, we send electromagnetic waves down optical fibers. So it has to be the second option, which I will call B in the absence of any actual labels. Radio station transmits signal at 9.1 times 10 to the 7 hertz. What is the wavelength of the radio wave? Light travels at 3 times 10 to the 8. Well, if we're going to say that speed equals frequency times wavelength, we want to know the wavelength, so we rearrange that to give us wavelength is the speed over the frequency. That's 300, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divided by 9.1 times 10 to the 7. So that's 3 times 10 to the 8 over 9 times 10 to the 7. That's a third times divided by 10, which would be 0.33. So it is the second answer. A machine does 6 kilojoules of work. This is now question 7. A machine does 6 kilojoules of useful work in 20 minutes. What's the power? Well, that's 6,000 joules, 6 kilojoules. 20 minutes is 20 times 60. So there's 6,000 over 1,800. And the answer is 5 watts. 1,200, my apologies. So it is the second answer. We're now on question 8. Butane, decane, or alkanes. Molecules of decane are larger than molecules of butane. Which row describes the properties of decane compared to those of butane? Well, that's just something you should know, really. and decane will have stronger intermolecular attractive forces and a higher boiling point. If you think about fractional distillation, your larger molecules come off at the bottom and your smaller ones, like butane, come off at the top. So butane has the lower boiling point, and that is because it has weaker intermolecular forces. So decane has a higher boiling point because it has stronger intermolecular forces. So that is A. Question 9. Which molecule contains the energy that is released in aerobic respiration? So what is broken down in aerobic respiration? It is, of course, C6H12O6. That's just a thing you need to know. Question 10. What is the name of a compound containing only carbon and hydrogen? Well, carbohydrates contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So it's a hydrocarbon. That's hydrogen and oxygen. That's carbon and oxygen. It is hydrocarbon. So it would be C if there were any letters to designate the answers. Which row describes a method used to obtain water from salt water and petrol from petroleum? So let's start by thinking about how we would get water from salt water. We would do that by distillation. You can't do it by filtering because the salt is dissolved in the water, so that wouldn't work. You might crystallize after you have distilled, but you're not going to, or during distillation, you might see crystallization. But distillation is the process you're using, and fractional distillation to get petrol from petroleum. So B. 12 then. Diagram shows an animal cell. The maximum diameter is 25 mil. The maximum diameter of the actual cell is 0.02 mil. So we know our magnification is the image size over the object size. So if we divide the image size, which is 25 mils, by 0.02, which is the actual size, the object size, we're going to get 1250. That is C. And the formula for sodium is Na+, oxide is O2 minus, that is to say 2 minuses. What is the formula for sodium oxide? Well, you're going to have 2 sodiums for every oxygen, Na2O. So that will be C as well. That was 13, and the answer is C. 14. Sample of wax is heated. It begins to melt at 45 degrees, finishes melting at 49 degrees. Sample of liquid is heated. It begins to boil at 141, remains at 141 degrees C while it boils. What conclusion can be made? Well, either they're both pure, they're both impure, or we have one of each. If they were both pure, they would both boil at one temperature. So the one that starts boiling at 45 and finishes at 49 must be impure. So the wax is impure, the liquid is pure. So that would be C. 15. Where must a fuse be connected? Well, that's on the live wire only. That's a thing you just have to know. 15B. Question 16. Which statement about air pollutants is not correct? CO2 is formed for the complete combustion of petroleum? No. Lead compounds are formed from some type of petrol? Well, no, because we don't have lead and petrol anymore. Oxides of nitrogen are formed from the combustion reaction inside car engines? Yes. Sulfur dioxide is formed from the combustion of coal? Yes. Okay, well, we used to have lead and petrol, so the answer must be B, even though we don't have lead and petrol anymore. So the answer is B then for 16. Question 17. In countries where it is usually hot, houses are often painted white. Why? Well, white is a good reflector of radiant energy. That's true. They're poor transmitters, they're poor absorbers. They're poor emitters. They're good reflectors. A. 18. Which statement about microwaves is correct? They are not longitudinal. Frequency of microwave greater than the frequency of visible? No, it's the other way around. Speed of microwaves in a vacuum equals the speed of visible light in a vacuum? That is true. The wavelength of microwaves is smaller than the wavelength of infrared? That is not true. So the answer is C. Question 19. Electricity can be obtained from the energy in water behind a hydroelectric dam. Is this energy resource renewable? Well, yes it is. And in which form is its energy stored? Gravitational potential. So it is renewable and it is gravitational potential. So the answer is D. I need a new sheet here, so let's do that. Okay, so I've got one question I'm on now, but our next question then, 240 mains supply causes a current of 4 amps. How much energy is transferred to the heater in 5 minutes? So we have V as 240 volts. We have a current of 4 amps. We want to know the power. The power is the potential difference times the current, which is 240 times 4, which is 960 watts. We've got 960 joules per second times 300 seconds. And that gives us 18,000 joules. Photograph shows some blood cells. What is the function of the cells you can see? Well, they are the red blood cells, of course, and they carry oxygen, so the answer there is B. These actions may be important in controlling the spread of disease: washing hands, disposing of waste frequently, using separate cutting boards for meat and salad, disposing of raw sewage into a river, which would help control the spread of disease. The answer is 1, 2, and 3, of course, because chucking your raw sewage into a river is not very helpful. So the answer there is also B. River water contains soluble impurities, insoluble impurities, and bacteria. It is made safe to drink by filtration and chlorination, which is true. Filtration will not remove bacteria, so that can't be true. Filtration removes insoluble impurities, and chlorination kills the bacteria. That is true. Filtration removes soluble and insoluble, no. And filtration removes soluble and bacteria, no. So filtration removes insoluble impurities and chlorination kills bacteria. The answer is B. Temperature of the water in 2 beakers X and Y is measured as 21.5 degrees. 5 grams of sodium chloride is dissolved in the water in beaker X. The temperature changes to 18 degrees. So the temperature has fallen in X. 5 grams of calcium oxide is dissolved in the water in beaker Y. The temperature goes to 29.4. That's a rise of temperature in Y. So X cools down, Y gets hotter. X is endothermic, Y is exothermic. The answer is B. An object is moving with uniform deceleration. Which statement describes its motion? So it is slowing down in a regular way. The rate of change of the speed is the deceleration. It says here that's uniform, unchanging, so that's not true. The speed is constant. Well, it's decelerating, so that's not true. The speed is decreasing. Well, that is true. And it's not increasing because it's deceleration. So the answer there is C for a change. Which matches the component of the blood to its function. Plasma does not carry glycogen. Platelets don't carry hormones. Red blood cells do carry oxygen. I don't even know what an E blood cell is. But plasma doesn't. No. So it is C again. During a long distance race, the body temperature of an athlete begins to rise, which changes occur to help the body temperature return to normal. Well, you would sweat increasingly, so it's not that one or that one. And the blood vessels will dilate, so it's D. Which word equation represents anaerobic respiration? That's breaking down glucose without oxygen. So it has to be the first two. In muscles, well, it's lactic acid and energy. You get this with yeast, for example. That's how we make alcohol. But this is what happens in muscles, so it's A. Diagram shows the arm being raised both before and after movement. So this shows the arm being raised. This shows the arm after the raising. What's the order of events that causes the movement shown? Impulse in motor neuron, muscle contracts, muscle pulls bone. That sounds plausible. Impulse in motor neuron, muscle relaxes. Well, no, muscles can only contract in order to produce that kind of movement. And the muscles don't push, they pull. So that's not true. Sensory neuron, well, that's not what's causing what's happening here. So that's no good. So it has to be A, the muscle contracts and pulls the bone. Clean, dry air contains nitrogen, oxygen and small amounts of other gases. The noble gases have been left out of the table, so we're only talking about nitrogen, oxygen and either carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. So you should know 78% nitrogen, so it could be this one. But small amounts of CO, no. Could be this one, that's true. But neither of them are right, so it is B.